good.
All right, you're good.
Yeah.
Correct. All right. So this is Senate Appropriations. We're continuing our work on the 2023 budget adjustment. And yesterday we left off, and I think we were on page,
You ended on page 11 on the web report that we were walking through the numbers on.
right.
This is Stephanie Garrett from the Joint Fiscal Office.
So we're now 327.
You are on 327. Before we go forward on that, I just want the members to know there's a one pager on SNAP because you were talking about that at one point during the day yesterday, maybe on the break, and I just wanted you to have a copy of what's up from DCF. You were mentioning it, so you do have that one pager on your. And then getting back to the budget itself, there were two items in the technical memo that we skipped over. There's an amount of money that has to move from family services to reach up. It's about $369,000 related to PNMI. It's just putting it in the right bucket. That was included in the technical letter, and I forgot to mention it when we were on those two sections yesterday. So, so section the family services section 317 needs to go down by about 369, and the reach up needs to go up by about 369 for the PNMI rate increases that are embedded. They just need part of the money flows through the reach up line item apparently.
I got mine because of month.
Yes.
I believe. The PNMI association families.
So it's just moving 369 from 317 to 323. Doesn't change the total at all, it just puts it in the right location.
Well, we certainly want to have our house in order here. So are we ready then to move on to 327 then? And this is the secure residential treatment. And is this the?
This is the pod construction. The pod, the proposed short-term pod facility.
Okay, and this is, I don't think they've cited it. I think there's been some discussion. It would be on state-owned property. I did hear that, whether it's in Windsor or.
If they just have hearing and St. Albans.
Maybe St. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if they made it.
St. Albans is a potential site.
But Stephanie, what we have here is there are two parts. One would be, I would think, the capital, and then the other is to operate.
This is only capital.
And we're doing capital in
We could move this money out of this line and put it in the one-time section, but it's my understanding that this is construction related for this.
I think it would, to me, I'm like, why would we put the one-time, that's why I'm asking the question. Because I tend to think of this as really adjusting base appropriations rather than.
It is, so it ought to be in the one time.
I guess if that's possible.
We can do that.
I would prefer to have one-time money.
We'll double check it. You have to make sure that there's nothing,
More that's
it doesn't add a lot of administrative stuff to move it, in terms of, because the entirety of the secure residential, most of what we pay for out of this is the out-of-state placements right now.
Yeah,
That's fine.
I would like to see an update by April 15th to the committees on appropriations, health and welfare and judiciary in the Senate.
Yes.
I don't know about the House.
I can't tell, but can I just ask, because the chair of health and, are you taking up, who's taking up the issue of where this will place?
Well, in a sense, nobody's taking up where.
Institutions would be.
Normally,
we all have to be there.
well, let me, historically, because I inquired of both of the chair and vice chair of the justice oversight, and then you had the child welfare, child protection oversight, and the general practice is we appropriate. What I was told is that we appropriate the money. We would review the program and the need for it, but ultimately the citing is the responsibility for the administration. So that was what,
With the advice and consent or without?
without, we're not, that, and Senator Sears, that, you can correct me, but that was what I got for a response,
Yeah.
because this very issue is a source of concern with the town of Newbury, who
Right.
feels that the administration is not listening to them, that town is not appropriate. And when that first came up, my inquiry was to the chairs, and I was told that the practice is not to have legislative involvement unless we're dealing with state-owned property, which institutions would deal with, but in terms of, for example, DAs, DSs have
That's right.
facilities all around, and we do not,
We don't do anything.
we do not,
We might set criteria, but we don't.
that's right.
Well, but my reason for asking for a report, if we're gonna be funding this, continuing, this, I think everybody agrees, has messed up the system of care
Yes.
for juvenile offenders particularly in the state, and we have a huge mess. And Newbury or not, I'm just asking for an update on what they're doing, because we keep going, I mean, we've been going through this since 2019 without a facility.
Right.
And I don't care where the damn facility is, just get a facility,
Get it done.
because you have the administration, they're all gone. Everybody, Mike Smith, Ken Schatz, those that's involved in this are gone. But, we're stuck with it, and we're seeing that as we're writing the S4, which is a bill on youth violence. We're seeing that, I think everybody agrees that we need something on top, but we see this administration hasn't moved yet.
Well, they
I know
kind
they're
of,
trying, but
well, and some of it is even prior to this administration. And so, to go back and ever reconstruct this whole discussion around the closure of Woodside, it gets very
I don't want to
complicated.
do that. I want to go forward
No,
with what,
no, I'm,
with an
but I'm
update.
thinking about, remember
Yeah.
that there would be savings, and,
Yeah.
and our concern was exactly what would be the replacement in the plan. And I think what you're asking for, Senator Sears, is an update to, I would like to know an analysis of the population in custody and the estimated number of youth that need different kinds of residential programs. And some, so what we're being told is that they believe, and they're still moving ahead with the small Beckett facility and the Beckett-owned property in Newbury. And this proposal would add more capacity for what, up to 8 or 6 youth? I think it should be 8 youth. And then the question is there something more that's needed within that system? I guess I would call it a system of care, because they are in the custody of the state. And that's, to be clear, what we're asking for an update would be on
placement of those.
And are we anticipating the future, or is this sort of an ad hoc response? And then something more is going to be needed after this. And I'm just wondering what you want to have is a sense
I want to
of.
have an update of where they're at in actually citing a facility, both short-term and long-term.
Okay, so the pods are viewed as a short term.
Yes, well, that's what
They're
they
definitely
said.
short-term. But we've also had, some of this data that you're asking for has been given for justice oversight. So it's not gonna be, it's not rocket science to get that information, but then where we currently are and what's the future look like, that's really, the future is really, I think, the important question.
So,
Kids in and out of care,
so the request that
education.
you want made to DCF
Yeah.
is an update on progress to date to expand that residential treatment. And would this be a treatment program as well? Or is
No,
it,
short-term detention.
it's a short-term detention?
I believe that's correct. I do think,
Then we need to be clear. I think they need to have a description.
I think that was in the
Was it?
presentation to Joint Justice Oversight in
Okay.
December.
Well, if they've already done it, we could just have a copy of it. But what it is that we're adding here, and what is the lifetime of this temporary?
It said 4 to 5 years, didn't it?
Yeah, well, supposed to be, but Middlesex was a little long.
You know,
Yeah.
quite a bit longer.
Well, hopefully they don't buy something like they did for the.
So why don't we keep going and, but,
And we'll work on a draft of that language.
if we could, and see if we can get a
Yeah.
more definitive response and an update. And we agreed that we would move, and you'll check to see if there's
And
anything.
you want the context of the sort of current caseload that we see, that they see in the viewfinder, essentially what we're serving now and what the need is. There are the single bed in Windsor, and I believe there was a second bed just come on in the sheriff's, that one
Yeah.
bed.
And that's a window.
Window, yes, window in Windsor.
And I think there was agreement that the one-time money for this capital, if it's a full 4.6 or whatever of the 4.6 is for that, would go into the one-time section.
Yes. So the note here says supplemental capital, so I think there's some existing money plus this 4.6 that is the total.
So we'll move on then. To 329, it's Dale Administration and Support, sorry.
And then the main item here is a skilled nursing facility, high acuity contract. They're starting up, we heard from Commissioner White. When they presented their budget. That's the primary change you see in the governor's change column. That's a little, it's just shy of $1.1 million. More on page 12.
High acuity nursing contract. And then 330.
330 is-
Independent living.
That's, I believe that's entirely SASH. Yeah, that's SASH funding. That you see the 568 in the Dale, basically the Dale grants line.
Let me, I guess this, I'm struggling with SASH. I thought one of the advantages that we get from our waiver is that we get Medicare participation in SASH, or is it Medicaid participation in SASH? I think it's Medicare.
We didn't get it.
So my question is, what is this, certainly SASH is really a critical support program for keeping our elderly. It used to be seniors aging safely at home, but it's now been renamed, but I can't rename my archive file, and I'm not going to. So the question is, why is this, this is all global
So
commitment?
this is Medicaid eligible folk.
Yeah.
So the Medicare piece of it would be direct, I believe,
Yeah.
to the.
So this would be just for the people that are not Medicare eligible then?
Well, if they're duals, so I don't know exactly how it works for dual and SASH,
Yeah.
but this would be for the Medicaid portion of it. If a portion of the same dual person's service package was paid.
Now,
to
you might have
Medicare.
somebody who's not Medicare.
Yeah, you might have somebody who's 100% Medicare, it's not showing up in our rolls at all, but is being served by SASH, and they would be getting directly funded by Medicare.
Well, I think we all recognize the importance of SASH in keeping our seniors in rural communities, so I can't imagine we wouldn't want to make sure those services are supported and continued. Any other comments? Shall we move on to DS?
So DS has basically two things going on in it for the $2.5 million. Two-thirds of or so is a caseload, the public safety caseload is up.
Oh, yes, 5 individuals.
And then there's also crisis bed startup and stability at Upper Valley Services.
And just to remind the committee, the population, 248 population, are individuals because of intellectual disabilities are not viewed competent to stand trial. And those are sometimes very expensive, and they are sometimes requiring, they're in small facilities, micro facilities that are all around the state. And they sometimes require a 2-on-1 supervision because of their because of risk of violence, and so they cannot stand trial. So they are under Vermont law are housed and supervised under the with the aging, the independent living.
They're constantly supervised.
They have to be
Before-
constantly, yeah, and there are a lot of other security measures and stuff. So we probably all have some of those small placements, but so the big chunk of that was 5 more individuals. And I think that we have no choice, but we have to make sure that they are supervised adequately. TBI.
TBI is increased utilization.
That's traumatically brain injured, for anybody, since we're throwing around. And that was increased utilization.
Yes.
I remember, a couple of incidents, people on ATV accidents where they were wearing helmets. Sometimes these are young people. Long-term care. Now, this is the nursing home.
Yeah, that's the biggest chunk. So 9.3 of this is the emergency financial relief. And then we had carry forward in the long-term care line, so we appropriated again, because of the way we end the year, the savings. So we appropriate the carry forward amount, we sweep out the general fund. We have the 1% reserve, and so 7.7 of this is actually appropriating the carry forward that came forward that wasn't allocated.
I'm not sure I sort of understand.
Okay. So the savings in the long-term care program, we have, we report on it at the end of the year.
I know all that, we have the 1% reserve.
And if we allocate it in the budget adjustment, we say what, you can't just sweep it, we have to know about it.
Yeah.
And they're proposing to keep it in, include, if in this 7.7 is the 1% reserve, but in the Medicaid report, year-end report, it's simply included to make the budget adjustment work here. So that's the.
So the question I have is,
There's no investments being made out of the carry forward.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
asking. All right.
That's what I'm trying to make the point.
Yeah, all right. All right, well, if anybody asks me, I'm going to yield to the senator from Washington.
There's skilled nursing facility medical director grants in this line as well, 1.1. And then the other significant amount in this line item is the cost settlement with the veterans home.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
So that's why
That's
we
in
end up with $20
Bennington.
million.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay,
Maybe.
it's all right here.
It's all in Denny.
Maybe.
All right, so the House made no change, and we're not, I don't thinking that we want to go in. This is on the emergency relief and the reasons that are listed on the narrative here. Some of these narrative descriptions are a little hard to work with.
On this one.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, that Dale does a good one that they handed out to us.
Yes, they
so
did.
It's easier to follow now.
They did, and I have it right.
For some of the smaller things, it's okay to use this one. Some of the bigger ones, it's much harder.
And, it's
Yeah.
this document right here that they gave us. So, for example, dealing with the medical director for nursing facilities is 1.1. We've got carry forward. Besides 3, and the vet home cost settlement is about 4.5 million. So that's where the 22.7 kind of was comes from. People are interested. Otherwise, I'm going to close that section out. Any more discussion? But the detail is all right here in the explanation. Okay, so let's move on to corrections. 338. Senator Sears, you paying attention? I'm sure.
I am.
Yeah.
House did no change.
No, they made no changes.
The majority of the cost there is the side letter net
Yeah.
of vacancy savings.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's the pay for correctional officers.
So justice at 338.1, the justice reinvestment 2 line,
Yes.
that's one I'm gonna recommend you stay open. Requested in that is the appropriation of the 1.9 of carry forward of out-of-state beds, that they're not allowed, much like the long-term care, they're not allowed to sweep. Of that 1.9, 650 is allocated, by the Joint Justice Oversight. But we've requested, DOC to make their recommendations of what the remaining 1.3 is. If you're silent on that, you're just letting DOC decide. And the chair had asked me to reach out to DOC. I haven't gotten that response yet. I did send a reminder, and I hope there's a memo coming shortly. But, did you actually receive one?
No, this is the memo that I
Yeah, from the
received from the committees. It just basically is saying recommendation for expenditure. And so for us, if we're going to decide, the first step was to see what DOC is identifying its recommended usage.
I think that's what they're,
And I think we haven't heard back yet.
well, I'm surprised, because that's,
From corrections, from corrections, so.
yeah, I'm surprised we haven't heard from corrections.
Well, we only asked it last week, wasn't it?
I did send a note last week, or. Yeah.
Maybe
Maybe last
he's busy with other stuff.
This memo, December 31st, you were busy New Year's Eve. so-
Yeah, we were.
Yeah. I just happened to
Actually, the
remember.
people that,
Okay, so we're going to hold that until we get, now what the House did was back it all out and then added a little, right?
The House did no change.
No,
The
they
House
made
made
no
no change, sorry. I must
The
have
the House did
wrong.
not actually add any language. I expected the House to add some language about the remaining 1.3.
Uh-huh.
They did not,
Well,
as
then
a
let's-
result of the letter from the Joint Justice.
okay, so let's hold open, as you say, and get more information, and then we can come back to this section. And now Beth's home, Karen's.
Well, out-of-state beds, do you want to just talk about that for a moment?
Wait a minute, I put my whole section. Okay, out-of-state beds.
So that's being adjusted downward to reflect basically what the experience was in 22. And so you see it moved up into the Justice Reinvestment 2 from the carry forward from the previous year. It reflects what they expect to use for out-of-state beds for this year. But this is the conversation that's probably bigger for 24. You don't see this being moved into the base of Justice Reinvestment 2 when we get to the big bill. And because I know members of the committee are interested in that, that's not, because the base is coming down on out-of-state beds, the hope was that we would see the base coming up permanently more in Justice Reinvestment 2, and you do not see that when you get to the big bill.
Well, that's another example of that base issue that was raised. I think they're using one time for the 2753 payroll as well. They're using one-time money.
For when you say 2753, the reserve.
The extra payroll.
Yeah, the extra payroll, 53rd week, Medicaid and payroll.
Yeah, that's, we
put in money every year, so
We did, and 22 was the year we had both of them paid out, and so
But I'm
Yeah.
saying, I think in the 24 budget, that's still one time, even though that's gonna be an ongoing payment to build that.
yeah, that, if it's listed in the one-time list, it's an odd place to put it. It's a normal transfer every year with an amount that's needed. It's just all pressure down on 25.
I know, so I don't know why I thought that was what they did.
You might have seen it in a list somewhere. I thought I saw it in the base list of transfers, and it's normal transfer.
Okay, we just need to be clear, because it's like, the more, and I got an email from Commissioner Gresham about the VHCB, and I just want to be clear, I do understand what the 24 budget's doing. Last year, we actually tried to make some progress on the amount that was not withstood, and added 10 million into the base to be ongoing, so close the not withstood amount. And my understanding is that the appropriation is made whole with one-time money, but the 10 million base addition that we put in got backed out, and then they
That's true.
inflated it by 3%. So I do understand what they did. It's just we thought we were making progress by reducing the amount not withstood, and it seems like we might
Yeah,
have
the priorities of what's in the base and what's
one time.
It's, that was a different approach from the administration. The one little nuance in the VHCB is that the one-time money of $10 million is entirely housing. $10 million that's in the base is housing and conservation.
Mhm. Yeah.
But yes, the administration's backing away there. This is, the question of, you have that option as you're building the budget to when you get to justice reinvestment to increase the base.
So let
But
me
they're not
ask,
doing it out of the gate for 24.
so the out-of-state bed reduction.
Yeah.
That's here, the one, almost 2 million.
Yeah.
And that is being moved up into reinvestment 2.
So,
That's part of the 2.7. I'm not clear on what they did with.
so we ended 22 with $1.9 million
Mhm.
of carry forward. And then you're also seeing it invested in justice reinvestment 2 up above. But you had wanted to turn that 1.9 million, almost $2 million, $1.98 million into a base funding. And so if we had, if the adjustment,
Whoop.
Just
Disaster
a minute,
twice.
we have a flood here.
oh no, there might be some in the door behind them. Peggy.
No, not anymore. Not anymore.
The pen doesn't matter, but the agenda's gone. That's okay.
We have to cancel the meeting.
Don't take that.
I like you.
Motion to adjourn.
That's the kind of vice chair, I don't know.
All that over getting a pen to sign up.
Oh.
The official
You're
document.
gonna be awfully sticky there, senators. We're gonna have
Well,
to.
luckily it's diet, so it's not gonna be sugary.
Oh,
That's good.
all right.
Thank you for your help.
Nutrition.
Bye, Mayor.
All right, Andrea's back and
Oh, thank you, man. Oh, you
It
got
won't be
the,
sticky now.
no, it won't be. Thank you.
okay.
Your expertise.
So what I'm wondering is, we need to make sure whether
Yeah,
anything got added to the base so that we're continuing to
So-
grow our
so there-
reinvestment.
so there's the piece from the close of FY22 that's come forward, that's appropriated, that we're waiting to say, how do you spend the rest of it?
Yeah.
And then there's the piece of 1.9 that they're also moving in on a one-time basis, appropriating in justice reinvestment 2 in 23.
So is that part of the 2.7?
It is.
Okay,
It's
that's
part of
what
the
I was
2.7, but it means that the language that was in the C section of the governor's budget asks for that to be spent over multiple years, as opposed to establishing a base in justice reinvestment 2 going forward, because you'll see the justice reinvestment 2 coming back down. And then the out-of-state bed will be set at roughly this $2 million number, which means that there won't likely be savings at the close of '23, and this number staying.
But that's why it's also important to maintain that base.
Yes,
Exactly.
that's the
Yeah.
tension.
Otherwise, it's countdown to nirvana.
In another
Or
bill,
nothing.
we're gonna put in language that will come to you, but we, being Senate Judiciary, are looking at language that would use 2019 as the base year.
Yeah.
For justice reinvestment too.
How
So in
much is
other words,
that?
how many people you had out of state in 2019 would determine savings in whatever year moving forward, because if you had 100 people out of state this year, and next year you have 120 out of state, they'd say there's no savings. But if we were at 200, there's an 80-bed savings.
So, and that, the other way to say that is you need to just get the base of justice reinvestment to at the level you want it going forward.
And then
It's,
the
Yeah.
question is how much you can increase it
if,
with
if,
additional
yeah,
savings.
because you do want to budget what you expect the need is for out-of-state beds. You want that, the bed line to be your best estimate. You don't want to inflate that in anticipation of savings.
Right.
But so the language in the Ben emailed me about it yesterday as well, that you have to have reporting whether or not you can force which we tried to do with the language last year into the base. Is that, is the rub.
But we did create a separate line.
We did create a separate line, so it's very visible.
But the mistake we made in 2008, when we did justice reinvestment one, when we did justice reinvestment one, we hit the Great Recession.
2008.
Yeah, that's what it started with.
My gosh, is that much time gone by?
Yeah,
Oh,
it started with Jim
Just-
Douglas and
yeah.
Peter Shulman.
yeah, yeah.
I
Number
don't remember
one,
who the speaker was.
reinvestment one.
Shannon Rose, okay.
Shaft, yeah.
Anyway, it started there, and we never, during the Great Recession, we spent the money on other stuff. And we never set a base year of, we were at 750 then.
That's right.
Oh, well, now that we've had that historical,
Yeah.
So it's something, I would think you want to close the out-of-state bed line. I just wanted you to be aware of the.
yeah, all right, we'll close that. We'll keep open justice reinvestment. Is that the,
That's waiting for the language on the 1.3 that was to be determined.
So you're closing two, closing three.
338.1 is staying open for the moment.
pending language?
Pending language about how directed you want to be about the FY22 carry forward remaining, along with the money that's in this line item about what it gets invested in.
Well, it's still not too shabby. It's 12.6.
No,
But it comes back down to the 9.8 when you see the governor's budget in 24. That's the other. The ask is to spend that additional 2.7 over time, along with and that's fine. It's just what are you spending it on beyond what joint justice have already identified that you want to know about?
All right, so we want to know about. So I think we'll keep 338.1 open, and we're needing language to go with that. And then out-of-state beds seem to be
This is
okay to close out.
this is the right estimate for the remainder of the year.
And then 342 is vets home.
And as you see the up, that sort of, you saw the up in Dale, the same up here, along with.
And that was the cost settlements, the
Yeah.
big piece of it. And that,
I think we'll have it here.
doesn't add up to the 5.8.
It's a variety of staff and physical therapy and occupational therapy cost increases, and agency nurses is a big driver. So the cost settlement piece up in Dale was
Was 4.5, 4.6, and this is 5.8, so there's some additional.
there is, and they're all listed at the bottom, at the last part of Adam's sheet.
Oh, yeah, okay. Physical therapy, occupational speech therapy, agency nurses, that's a big one, 1.4. Yeah, okay. Well, I think those are the costs of running the vet's home, so.
I wonder how their populations, because it was,
Yeah, it's stabilized.
it has.
No, I think they've got their census up, haven't they?
I mean,
It was going down or up?
it was going down, they were having problems a few years ago.
With occupancy, but I think they,
I think, part of their, that they have other nursing homes have significant staffing problems. Need for
Do you know, Dick,
people who might have gone to somewhere else.
so you have a
did they ever
question?
get that prescription drug deal worked out?
I think so, yeah. One Tim Ash
Well, would be, that was the topic of discussion, what could be done, what couldn't be done. So now we're finished human services, we're now in the general education. And some big ones here, but I think that they were just really,
So this gets updated to the school budget. Also, I think we missed sort of a rotation of updating this number last year. We normally mid-session update the current number from the governor after school budgets. And there's some sort of disconnect internally, and so that's what's reflected here is the need for this payment, this spending authority out based on what the net.
it says estimated education spending used at the time of the budget is being updated for actual education spending. So it's just a updating it with known figures. And that was almost 16 million. So we'll close that out. We can't argue with what's actual. Of course we could if we wanted to. The next one is a retirement, and this is 800,000.
That was the known amount from the follow-up from the actuary after we passed the reform bill.
We knew
We were gonna have
had
to true up, and this is the true up.
Where is that again?
This is on page, well, it's
Is it under,
16, and it's 800,000, and
Oh,
there
I
are
see.
two pieces. And on the spreadsheet, there's the difference between actuarially adjustments following Act 114 and those that were used to calculate Act 185 total. So it's just a matter of
It's truing up the ADEC with the action that we took in the reform bill last year.
but
and
it's
we
a
knew this.
round truing up, like 800 even?
It is, so these are actuarial estimates of what the amount needs to be paid in to the funds and
Not round,
yeah, they're
Okay.
very broad.
got it.
What are you talking about, the grant?
Yeah.
Oh, what do you mean, why is it categorized as a grant?
Yeah, why is it categorized as a grant?
It's just the object code that it falls into. This is basically the money from the state into the retirement fund.
Yeah, I understand that, but I would have thought of it as an appropriation. Sorry.
It is an appropriation, and we've always carried it on the grant line, because it's not really an operating service or a personal service item. It's just the historical major object code that it falls under. But and it's one that we do have.
It's probably been this way since you were chair of appropriations in the
I'm
House.
sure it has been forever.
And
but it
all of a
just
sudden you
looks-
awoke from your reverie.
No. But it just looks funny as a grant.
Could I ask him, could you call the Senate office and ask them to come down and get a bill?
Oh, right here, you don't need to.
Oh, there,
Your
Wow.
second.
Wow, that was
Psychic.
amazing.
Hands up.
wow, that was quick. Thank you.
I'm impressed.
See, we reorganized that.
I
out.
mean,
Wow, that was really great
boy,
timing.
are you influential?
I guess so.
Yeah.
I just had a feeling I had to be here right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I'm gonna close the 800,000.
That's your bill.
Got it. All right, now we're to commerce and development.
S86.
And this is truing up the municipal regional planning fund. We made the
Oh, yeah.
We made the numbers right in section D100, which is where we notwithstand and transfer the property transfer tax money into its components, and we just didn't catch up in this section. So that's what you see here.
So the House made no changes, and this is, we would agree then, this is just,
This adjustment just reflects what we, and actually we took in Act 185 in another section related to the property transfer tax. We should have caught this last year, but we didn't.
all right, so this is really a technical change. According to this, full region planning fund amount to match amount provided in section D.
We upped the amount going to the municipal regional planning fund, but we didn't do the appropriation back in the agency where it lives.
Oh, details. All right. So that really isn't any higher spending, it's just moving.
No, it's not a change from what we anticipated last year. We just need to grant
Put
the
it in
spending authority here too.
All right, so that is it for commerce and community development. Now we're on to transportation. And Chris came into transportation this morning and ran through all of these in detail, and he had no objections to what was being done. And there was some question about town highway structures and
We'll get back into that very soon when we get to the language package.
well,
Okay.
Why would they cut so?
they did not, it has, and Andy can explain it as well. What they would do is set aside the money, but what was happening is, they want to switch to the payment so that they're, the appropriations reflecting what they estimate they'd actually be spending. So then carrying a lot of this, kind of what was technically obligated money.
So they're carrying the money forward for the projects when they work on the projects.
So that's, they were trying to do it
That's all
more
you needed
is,
to know.
and
So-
which is what you do with a capital bill. You might have a large project, but you only pay it out over a multi-period of time. So there were several,
Didn't want anybody to ask the question, are you cutting town highway bridges and not have an answer? Thank you.
okay, and structures are culverts too.
Yes, I know. Structures are mostly, are anything over 20 feet.
What?
Not all structures are culverts, but all culverts are.
That's what
He loves transportation.
For,
So,
for the sake of.
You're an expert on that as
You
well.
get no federal money if it's not 20
and then the other, I mean,
20 feet.
Stephanie can run through, but the 3.2 is taking money from TIB and just moving into the T fund, because the T fund was so anemic that it just was a swap.
Remind me what TTI.
TIB is Transportation Infrastructure Bonding money.
Okay,
and
You're
it's
sitting
something-
across the architect.
Right here, he is the architect for that.
Yeah, I am the architect.
They call it
I
this
am.
thing too.
Yep, that's
You invented the tip.
He did.
Well,
Well, I'll have to make that part of your resolution,
With,
Senator.
with some help, yes.
Uh-huh.
And the beauty of that is when you bond there, it doesn't go against the bonded indebtedness of the state.
And we paid it down, so TIB, there's no TIB bonds. We paid them all off last year, remember? Well, maybe not.
But you could go again.
Frankly, I
Yeah.
never knew the famous tip.
But you
Yeah,
could,
but you must have known we paid the TIB bond off.
I must have known that,
Yeah, you
yes.
probably did.
You
So,
know, I kind of gloss over transportation because there's so many members of this committee just no transportation,
Yeah, you couldn't change it anyway.
No, I mean,
The whole committee up.
all I care about is the roads are clear and dry when I drive home.
but it's nice to have a nice bridge once in a while.
Yes.
Yeah, we do like bridges.
We don't wanna fall through.
And the rail is the last one on here, and that we went through the other day on the.
And that was just simply, we got more federal money, and so we didn't have to use as much.
So we're done with this packet. I mean, there's other pieces in here for tracking purposes, but we'll get to all those pieces when we switch to the language packet.
All right, so
Yeah, let's go
switch
to
to the
work.
language.
Yeah, we are switching to work. So now that I know what
Especially
it
when you
is.
go
You can rest easy.
Transportation infrastructure, yeah.
That did transfer, it still has to be used for what?
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
uses.
Right, it does.
Transportation what?
Infrastructure bond.
And we use
And
the money,
infrastructure
we use
includes
the
all
tax
this. I learned today.
to, in Irene, and we used them from, the Obama money in the Great Recession.
So we don't have to move it to the transportation.
So there is some,
We just-
the transportation
same
fund
project
is
as
state money.
Um,
And if you just-
It's just clear that way.
Yeah. And- But it ends up over on the right hand side.
Except I think maybe we had already projects that were using the transportation money, so it was maybe easier to move the tip
Are
over.
you saying there's a flaw in the Senator Westland's too?
No, no, no. There was-
We're just getting prepared for the resolution when they talk to Charlie, whether it is a good thing or a bad thing.
Help me.
Mr. Chairman, whereas
Where are
Richard Westland invented the tip, whereas it is excellent.
You can stop right now.
In association with George, what's the guy?
So,
Santos or whatever his
I
name
don't think
is, the congressman from Washington.
He also has that.
all right, committee, we need to come back to order.
Okay.
That's right.
All right, I'll leave on that note.
I think you should, and drive very carefully, and
I
hopefully
will,
the weather
thank
will
you.
be good. Get home before dark, that's the main thing.
Thank you.
So now we're going to this document right
This
here.
annotated working document, to walk through the language, and that we've gone through where the stars are in that first, halfway through the page is where all those we just went through will end up when it's an actual bill. So section 45 is the one-time section. This is where a lot of the action in the House and where probably a lot of the pieces you want to discuss are.
Okay, so this is the
General fund.
one-time general fund appropriation, and this is the first one, is the organic.
Yes.
And this is the one that our Senate Ag is taking up. But I think the general feeling is that this is a very significant, and it's a new program, and that we need more time, and that it should be part of our 24 budget discussion and be weighed against all the other pieces of funding requests. And because if it's a new program, regardless of whatever the amount is, it takes time to figure out the parameters, take the testimony, and I think that in the House, the Agency of Ag did not testify.
No, and
And they would be the administering entity for any program such as this. So my sort of sense of what the committee feeling was that we need to give our Ag committee the time to really fully vet this, take the testimony, understand what it does, who's getting what, how much they get, the methodology, the criteria, and ultimately to make a recommendation in terms of what funding there should be, or not back to us. So I'm with that, knowing it's still under development, suggest we not act on
yeah,
spending more time on this for
we
now.
talked in committee, and, it's gonna take some time to figure this all out. And, no, it really, it's too much, too quick, and we haven't got the basic, policies in view to to deal with it. So that would, I think that would be,
Well,
would certainly be the recommend of our committee that we've had 20 minutes last week, or about, 2 hours last week, and a few minutes this week on it, but it's
Now-
needs.
now this is unreserved, but when you're reserving money, in essence, you're putting a fence around it and
We're gonna do
saying
it.
that is our number one priority. And I don't think that this committee has made any decisions around priorities of something new. Obviously, the budget adjustment is usually a technical to true up and address something that is, ongoing, but maybe something unexpected, or the estimates were too high or too low. So, so I go ahead and then Senator.
I would just say, it talks about in the language, the ag agency coming up with a plan by March 15th. And shall be reviewed by the committees of the legislature and jurisdiction enacted into law by the General Assembly. So this would have to be, under this scenario, a plan put forth and then a separate bill going through both houses of the legislature. And so nothing would start until the second half of March. The way this place works, nothing would go through until April. So the process here wouldn't get that money out the door
Right.
in this for at least 2 months. And we may decide after the committees have looked at it, that we would have another plan, or we might do it in the budget in a way where we said on passage. So this just,
All right, so.
it's all clunky.
All right, so I think what this leads down is we're gonna remove this section from the BAA as we pass it, recognizing that you're gonna be taking that up and then make recommendations in the
We'll come
context of
forward.
either a separate bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or,
Through appropriations.
or through the 24 budget.
Right.
And the other thing, timing can, not everything has to, if we decide something needs to move forward more quickly, we can make it effective upon passage, and we do certain expenditures that way. So it's not as though, people, if this is gonna somehow be detrimental timeline, I don't think there's gonna be more than 10 to 12, but 12 to 14 days difference, to be honest. So,
This process that's set up here, anybody that knows this process, there's no way anything could get through before April in this process that's set up. It's
Yeah, my question, you've answered most of it, but I'm just wondering, because I know we don't want to do policy in the budget adjustment. How common is it to hold some amount in reserve and then say we'll
develop the program later.
right, because it seems like then you're admitting that it's a policy program and should be done through the normal process. And you're not even freeing up the money now. So I don't know what value there was other than maybe internally reassuring people that you could say we put a fence around it, but it doesn't seem like this gets us anywhere.
No further ahead than we could.
Yeah,
Can do
it
through the
in a
normal track.
normal fashion and get it done.
But it does send a message of urgency that the organic farmers are feeling. So, I mean, it does say, this is serious, we're not ignoring it.
but it does make a decision prior to the
It does.
budgeting process, which,
It does.
yeah.
It really is begging.
Can we change our mind?
Well, I'm just thinking, this is the kind
That's the
of,
question.
to some extent,
Not so reassuring.
this requires really the work of a committee to create a program and take testimony and develop it. We normally would have a better sense of that than we have right now, I guess.
Plus, I plan on working with the House Committee more on this because it was a one-shot deal of 2.25 hours. They didn't have time to that, and we certainly didn't, and so, you know, I'll work, our committee will work with.
So I think the important thing is to say, there's a lot more work that needs to be done to fully understand that there needs to be more testimony. Ultimately, this request and benefit and expenditure would have to be considered along all the others, and heaven knows we've got a long list of very compelling
Urgent needs.
urgent needs, and so to actually take the step of reserving and saying this is where we want money to go at this point early on in the process seems to be premature. And 2.5 hours of testimony on over $9 million in a new program is not doing due diligence that I think it deserves and requires. So.
I've said this to you 1,000 times now, and you get sick of it, but it has been the history around this place that new policy was not in the budget adjustment. We waited till the budget year, and I think the further we stray away from that, the more trouble we can get ourselves into.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'm doing parallel budgets. So let's move on then. So I think this is something that we're going to consider in the context of 24. We're going to give the committees a chance to do work, get the testimony, understand this request. And this seems to be, I know that the NOFA organization, they've sent me information. I don't know if they sent it to everybody. I can put it on the webpage. I'm sure it's yours, but this committee does not have the time to really create a program and take the testimony that we rely on the subject matter committees to grapple with.
Yeah, when we heard about this, I already had the next week's agenda. I mean, this was a total surprise.
We should move on to aging and independent living. And it's,
This is the adult day,
okay,
and so,
that's why Virginia's down here.
so they're adding 2.1 to cover the cost and keep the infrastructure in place. You did add 1.5 last year, and that's outdoor already. And I did add language that you see at the bottom of page 2 and onto the top of page 3.
Now, the other thing, we had some discussion, what is the Medicaid mix?
Yeah.
And most of the adult days, we've gotten the information based on contact with them, is they're like 90-95% Medicaid, except for 2. One is, I guess, in Middlebury and another area that are 70 or 75%. So it is, there's very, with the exception of 2, they are really reliant on the Medicaid reimbursement, and that's the population they're serving. And those would be individuals that would be at great risk of going into a nursing home, assuming that there was a bed. And if they don't, they end up in the hospital, and it's going to make the hospital census even more of a problem. So that was the answer on that in terms of the Medicaid, in terms of the payer mix. So with rare exception, Medicaid is the payer. And there's also, are we supposed to be looking at a reimbursement structure as well, a report coming back?
I think that's coming out next week. And this money is it's basically to keep them afloat. It's not, it wouldn't be going out through a rate. It's pure general fund. It would be going out as a mixed dollar in Medicaid.
Is it possible to do that? I mean, can we?
I don't think it is right. I had a conversation this morning with the agency, and it doesn't sound like it's possible to do that. The question of the rate going forward, they can't quite draw all the budget that's there because the census isn't fully up everywhere, but that, the big question is, what should the rate be set at? And my understanding that we'll be seeing a report next week out on the rate. That's,
So does this language,
this was in response to, because of this method of keeping them afloat, this is the 3rd year of doing that.
you know what, the thing is, this language to me is a little problematic, to the extent that the current service provision model, the service provision model may be very sound. It's just the level of funding that has been, provided to support the model. So it's one thing, it's projected to remain economically unsustainable. I'm just looking at that language relative to what do we want here? Are we saying that the adult days are, we're going to go back and revisit, is that a valid service model? What do we, I mean, I'm like struggling, what's it going to give us other than another go back and look? I don't know what, I know that, and the other thing I don't think we probably have a good sense on, and that is the acuity of care. But my impression, when I go to the adult day in my area, these are people that are really requiring a lot of care. They're getting foot care, they're getting showered, they're getting fed, they're getting, socialization, but they are, many of them are in walkers, wheelchairs. And so they are not people that are, it's not like a social, like maybe a senior center. They are really providing a very significant level of care. And I'm not sure that we fully understand the intensity of care that people are requiring in these centers.
So we had 3 places that closed. We put money in the budget to help Dale and the agency with communities that they wanted to start. There's been no take up around that. Some of it's labor. There's a whole number of
When
reasons.
the reimbursement isn't sufficient to
And
make it viable.
Some of it is all of the above. I'm not really sure what just studying this again will do.
I agree about what the service provision arrangements, now that's something that we could look at, but I don't think it's gonna give us a lot of information about models, I don't think I agree, there aren't models out there.
I would think that it's better that the policy committees around this legislature take a look at this issue and come up with some recommendations.
Well, I think what we're suggesting is maybe this language we think it might be somewhat gratuitous, or we're not sure what it would necessarily achieve. Or do we really want to, the report shall include recommended alternative local service provision arrangements? I don't know what they'd be.
I don't know what they would be either.
And so it's just sort of, we want to study it to find the answer that has eluded us so far.
I think that the information we want is that, has this support provided any possible sustainability for the adult day that's in place? I mean, we're really looking at the economic stability of these adult days, and
So
there may be, I mean, the workforce issue is a real issue for every long-term care provider. And if the workforce can't, if you don't have the workforce there, no matter how much money you put in, that's one of the conundrums that is higher up the healthcare chain. You always bring the workforce.
Well, my adult day said they had an LPN's worked with them for 5 years and earning $15.50 an hour. Now, that unless somebody is independently wealthy or just has such a huge commitment to the program, you could go anywhere as an LPN and earn a lot more than $15.50 an hour. So I sort of sometimes feel like we know what the answer might be, but we want to study it, or we think that there's some, as I say, some easy way. I just don't want to spend time on this that isn't productive. So maybe we could just take this language out and come up with something that could be a little bit more, have a little bit more utility for us. And I think
I
this
want to
is,
know how many of the places are supported by volunteers. How many are supported by,
well, you aren't gonna get volunteers to bathe and
no.
take care of people's feet and
Volunteer can be a nurse that, in that place. And
so I'm gonna suggest that we come up, if we want language, we need to have some replacement language that somehow, but I also think it, in light of that study in terms of reimbursement, maybe more helpful than this, because it could very show, I mean, we're not saying to childcare, go back and tell us that there's another alternative for childcare because the bill is $175 million or whatever. I mean, we're not questioning necessarily the model, although this seems to be suggesting that there's some other
way of
model
doing it
alternative
with the
out
same amount of resources,
and
same money?
I don't
Can't do it.
I don't think you can. So we can look at replacement, but I think what we're really talking about is, stabilizing this part of our whole and community support system. And maybe we can think of a way of stating it. I'm sure we can. So I'm going to move on, and we'll hold that pending a more, I don't know, something that captures more of what we think we would want to.
And you're leaving the 2.1 in at the bottom of page 3.
I think we have to. I think they're, it's sort of like the DAs. The pair mix is negligible. You've only got really what the state provides. And then maybe the study in terms of what that reimbursement requires is will be illustrative, but I think it would require more money, to be honest, than, because I imagine the adult days are level funded in the 24 budget.
I imagine they are.
Yeah. Well, the DAs are level funded in the governor's budget, and the SSAs are level funded, and youth services bureaus are level funded. In this inflationary and workforce environment,
In the 24 budget?
in the 24 budget. Recovery centers, I mean, all those community programs that are out there.
How do, can't imagine how he expects those folks with no level funded and every state agency is coming in with 4 to 8% increase.
Well, that's maybe one of those left and right hand side of the buildings. We can't do it, but they can. I have no idea. Yeah.
Can you just give me a legend of the editing of this document? So that is the
Yeah.
black obviously is
The black was what was proposed by the administration for your language for the budget adjustment, and the red is what the House has changed from that. I'm
And
sorry,
then
I
we'll
should've
be
said-
green.
And then you'll be green.
okay, so the
You'll be green against
so
the
even if
House's
it's red,
black.
you make it red. Sometimes there's strikeouts in red, sometimes strikeouts are not in red. Is there a difference?
What are you looking at?
And you're looking at the next one up.
Like if you look at the top of this
Yeah.
page, there's black strikeout and red strikeout. And if
That's
the House is the only,
striking out the governors.
So I think that
Why
what
some-
what this reflects is probably a couple steps in their thinking in the House and the way that,
but any edits are in here are House edits
yes.
based on the governor's
Yes.
recommendation.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And then we will be green.
Yeah.
So we can track it. All right. So we've got the 2.1 for one time.
And at the top of page 4, you have the 3 million for, this is the the municipal technical assistance program that is defined in another section of the bill that was no longer called the index.
Yes, because they, I know that Representative Markot's committee, and I think several senators participated in the discussion about that methodology and the impact it had and what valid factors. So I think the question is, do we, they concurred with the governor to make that 3 million. I think it's really important that people remember it's providing technical assistance. It's not as though it's funding a project or anything.
No, but what's great about this is, like, I represent a lot of small towns that don't even have a town manager or a town assistant, and they really need some technical help. They can
Well,
get it out of here if they can't do it through their, local,
Yeah.
development.
so the question is, we'll agree with the 3 million aid. It really is an expansion or builds on the ready effort that we put in place, as well as the technical assistance that we funded for the league. And I would say that both of those were legislative initiatives,
Yeah,
to be honest. So you should be happy that they all. So the 3 million is on a one-time is okay. And then we'll look at the language, but I believe Keisha has reviewed the final that was included in the as passed. But I'll confirm that. So I think she worked on it.
I talked to her last week. She did indicate that she was in agreement with what
Yeah,
was.
she sent me an email. So shall we move on then?
Yep, number 25, this is a recommendation that was in the governor's proposal, the House agreed with the 3.345. This is, so we were trued up to match for FEMA through the end of FY22. This is an estimate of the remaining 10% state match for FEMA claims, COVID-related FEMA claims, pandemic-related FEMA claims through the agency of administration, basically Douglas Farnham, the company. And then number 26.
Well, we certainly want to draw down on the FEMA money, so I think that's okay. Digital services for LiDAR.
We heard from Sean Naylor on this one.
And I think they have to do it fairly quickly, and the mapping is so
So we have
important.
to do it while the leaves are not out.
So that's why I had to come in and budget adjustment. Okay, so we're all okay on that. This is number 27 is.
This is match for military. I believe we put money in last year in effective on passage in 22 with a larger sum, and then we knew that there was a tail piece that needed to come in. The budget
This is
for
the tail.
the tail piece, yeah, for match.
Okay. So this is for the federal facilities in Vermont.
Number 28 is 30 million, and there's additional language requested by the board to go with this.
Yeah. What the board has asked is that we be not quite so prescriptive, because if for some reason that NTIA grant should fall through, they would like to, and so the language really would say the 30 million could be available for this or for any other federal matching or program, so that it gave them flexibility and not tie it to one specific grant. I believe they've submitted the grant already, but it hasn't been decided on. So the language that they asked for gave more flexibility, so that if in this environment they found something else and this fell through, it wouldn't tie at all. It would allow them to move forward and draw down the dollars.
It would be added here.
And we would replace 28 with new language that basically should be to serve as a state match with the NTIA or any other federal grants or programs.
So we would have used additional green with the flexibility as we're requesting it.
So that would be, we would replace it with green.
There's no, we do any tail end on did we? I mean, eventually, if there's no other grant to get it, then they'd have to.
Well, then they can't use it for anything other than a federal, to match a federal grant or program. So the language is prescriptive. They can't say, well, now I'm gonna take the 30 million and use it as general fund and, no, it's tied very much to, other federal funding
If we got
opportunities.
through the IIJA funding cycle without using it, they would have to come back to that legislature.
So
At
that
point,
language
we have
doesn't
to-
give them total flexibility. It really is limited to federal grants and programs. And I don't have the right, well, I do have it, obviously, look, but that's what it says. So this is very much for a specific grant. And it's just hedging their bets. I think we're probably in pretty good shape, but if that should not turn out to be the case. So we're gonna replace that language. And then 29. That's just,
For Tracy Dolan on this piece.
and there's more money, $1 million in the 24 budget.
There's $1 million, I think there's another piece as well in the 24 budget.
But this is still one time.
This is
We're not
one
building
time.
a base obligation
Right.
here.
Right, that's correct.
Oh, this is the next one.
This is number 29.
Yeah.
And we had, so are we all right with this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
We just wish they get work permits so that they really do want to work. Okay, now this is to the 9.2, Department of Mental Health. This is another reserve until feasibility, and I think our general thinking was that this belongs in the 24 budget as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, without even a feasibility study, needs a little bit more attention. It's not to deny that we need to have more treatment. It's just, it seems like this, at this point, it's pretty kind of preliminary. And so that is, so we will
I was
take that
gonna
out.
suggest we can move that 9.2 to the organic, so we gotta study them, maybe we could do a study together.
Just pay attention to the bar.
We're just doing the same thing, like reserving the money and
Then
then
they-
let's figure it out later.
Well,
I don't, and there are times when it makes sense to reserve the money, but we need to have a little bit more flesh on the bones.
Yeah,
And so we're just asking to have more time to do that.
yeah, because I guess I would wonder, how do you get to that specific number, 9,225, if you don't know yet what you're spending it on? It's like,
I haven't even done the feasibility
That
study.
was a better estimate than those farmers.
Yeah, the 25.
So,
And then they're gonna, by April 15th, they'll have the findings of the feasibility study. So I'm just thinking this, there's no urgency
we're
here.
we're gonna be on the downhill drag in this session and you're gonna plop a study in front of us. I would think that this is another area that the policy committee should be looking at.
Oh, yeah, we are.
So Senator Lyons,
I'm
No,
just
I
saying
know,
that
but
rhetorically.
it should have happened a long time ago.
Yes, I agree with that, but by the time you get an April 15th study,
It should be ready to close down.
Yes.
okay, so let's 31. This is 3 million to OEO for housing voucher. To rehouse families experiencing homelessness by providing bridge funds for temporary rental assistance or non-outreach.
Didn't we just talk about, yeah, that's
Well,
all
we-
move it to, move it.
No, we haven't talked about this one. I think that's the other thing we need to look at in total, with the housing.
Across all the rollout of the tail end of the ERAD plan, the 15 million this.
And, do we have any explanation? I mean, how many families and stuff, is that in here and all?
Wendy and the DCF, but
Well, I think Senator Lyons and I are gonna be spending a little more time on
so
housing.
we'll just,
Yes.
we'll leave it open just for
We'll leave it open.
further explanation.
And then this is VHIP, and I think we've just heard that they've got more buildings and more homeowners that are interested in taking this up, and these are units that come online very quickly. So,
It's 15 million
In the 24 budget.
This is an existing program, not starting something.
right?
so are we okay with that?
Fit the category
Um,
of adjustment.
This is an iteration, number 33, and it's, we had supplied the match for grants in other communities, Randolph, and I can't remember, Springfield. And so this is one, instead of doing it for one community, it's for the whole Northeast Kingdom using NBU and NVDA, and it's to provide the match to this EDA grant that is available. So
This one is funded actually in the governor's 24 budget, just moving the timing of it up because of the time of the initiate.
And there was a lot of testimony from Representative Marcotte's committee when this came in. And it was recognizing the time sensitivity of when the grant had to be submitted. That's why it was being moved up. So this is not a new initiative. This is, this is the, would be like the third community, except Northeast Kingdom is a lot more than one community, Randolph or Springfield. So the big ones, of course, would be Newport and St. Jay, and Linden and Island Pond. And so, so we want to treat this grant the same as we have for the others. And then I'm going to suggest we take all this housing for the time being and just not actually just spend a little more time on hold. Sylvia and I, we need to do some history and looking at, what we have for different housing. People may remember that we put $15 million general fund to help fund housing services for the last quarter, knowing that the federal funds are ending. And that how that 15 million, we have the plan that was submitted to joint fiscal, need to look at that in terms of how that was proposed to be used. And then we can sort of see what we have.
And you're including in that the next page with the Park Street development?
No, that's not
separate.
Not that,
That's totally
okay.
separate issue.
That's why I asked.
And I've been told that perhaps the language needs to be tweaked a bit, but I think there was a general consensus that it made sense to procure the buildings. We were paying Brandon $120,000, and the Howard Center is operating a facility there, and I think these are high needs adults that are being where this program is serving. And my recollection of the committee discussion was that this, we had to preserve the capacity, and these buildings are up for sale.
And this strikes me as, for those reasons, significantly different than the other reservations here that we've been talking about. Because this one, I really do think we run the risk of, if we don't act, either having to move that population, which is going to be impossible.
And citing.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
But they have to do this study before they.
And I'm not sure, I think we need to take a look at the language. I'm not sure you need a feasibility study to stabilize the housing you're currently in and delivering services, but we do love studies. I hate studies.
It's an assessment, it's not a study.
Thank you for paying attention, Mr. Vice Chair.
You should have been a lawyer.
But I think that there's some, I think I'm being sent some additional language, so I'm gonna hold it open till I have a chance to look at it. But the concept of preserving that site and those buildings for continued use, to serve this population, I think we were all in agreement that we absolutely couldn't jeopardize the continuation. So, and this is once again, they shall be reserved.
So that, you might want to revisit the whole construct of how the money flows out on this one.
Yeah.
It
35,
might not need to be a reserve so much as a.
right, because we want them to be able to put a deposit on the building if they need.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
And we have April 1st to come back with the report.
So, well, they do have a report, shall submit a report with the findings of the study. That's a new one.
They don't mention the assessment again.
No, well, we're gonna just, I think there's total agreement that we need to make sure that that program continues to operate and that we have a site that's been there for 20 years and the population being served is absolutely one that's difficult and we don't want to jeopardize it. So we will hold that open. The money's not the issue, it's just some of that language that's along with
This
it.
deal, they wanna, the building is for sale from whoever owns it.
Yeah.
They look at trade, Cherry Street in Burlington for Avon.
Well, they've been paying rent of $120,000 a year for 20 years.
Yeah, but now
With a
they
clause
want,
to purchase.
they want to cash it in, the value's gone.
Oh, you're talking about which building? This one or the Burlington?
Well, this one is, I'm sure in the last 20 years, it's gone up in value.
You know,
And the
maybe
one in-
recently, but I'll tell you, Rutland County property values were in the bottom of the barrel and they had not regained their value compared to other regions of the state. Maybe they have now, but they were lagging. But let's move on. I see it's 3 o'clock and I know that we're gonna lose another senator here shortly. Number 36 is the judiciary, and I think there was pretty much agreement that when they came in to testify about the need for this. So unless we want to revisit it, we should concur with the House. They don't actually ask them to come back with a study or anything. do they?
So the networking project you'll see later on.
This study.
Has an assessment that you do want for that project.
That's an assessment. And then 37 was the appropriation of VHCD.
Yeah.
And I think we had some discussion about how much you want to put in the budget adjustment versus within the context of the 24. Kind of came down that we were thinking 25 was a reasonable amount to go with the 40 that's already in the pipeline yet to be allocated. That was my kind of recollection from yesterday.
We had the weather.
So,
Oh my gosh,
Yes.
I'm bagging tonight. I'm gonna go home. I'm not gonna stay
right.
until 7:30 tonight and drive home in this Campbell.
Keep going until.
Higher
Huh?
elevation.
Yeah, higher elevation. And Ginny, you're going?
Yeah.
Well, I owe $30 for my dinner. Center food.
I need it,
Your chin. Oh, yes,
I need a tin.
okay. Do we want any more discussion on VHCD? I need to, let the chair, our economic development know that that's kind of our recommendation. And we'll go with that unless there's some, feedback that would indicate.
I did point out that there's two incomes there in the second line.
I'm sorry.
Mixed income.
Oh.
It's the income that's mixed.
Mixed income. Oh, yeah. But that's, yeah, right, you can use it for yourself. Here's my money.
Yeah.
Take
I'm
off.
paid for two.
Yeah, I want my.
Number 38, this is the, to the to Lund. I think we have talked about that. And
Right.
closure, it's sort of like the Park Street, I think we were agreeing that that was necessary. And 30,000, I'm sure we all got an email saying that we should pass the budget adjustment simply because of this. So,
30,000 well spent.
and it assures passage, unanimous support of the budget adjustment. Because, so I think we can close that out. 39. And then,
Agreed.
because we've already made that decision. And we're gonna fund the OPEB study for the treasurer, and that's 100,000.
Remind you, later, we talk about funding studies.
How to invest money.
This is
This is a good one.
This is a good one, because it's hiring people with the expertise to determine what is the best oversight and management system. So I think we can close 40 because that's ours. And then one-time environmental fund appropriations. And this was the PFAS money, and I think everybody was in agreement. And this is the testing of the well.
This is the appropriation out of the environmental contingency fund. You'll see the same $3 million coming in as a transfer from the general fund in another spot. Go along.
Did we include, does this include the allocation?
The testing, they said the insurer
Oh, that's
gonna
right.
take care of testing, at least it's the first round. That was my
Yeah.
The
understanding.
law.
Yeah, so that we can close
46.
Yeah, 46, 47 is,
These are.
these are moving the money around.
These are the one-time appropriations related to the IT projects. We had them embedded in the ADS line when we did the bill last year. You saw the very first section of this bill pulls out them from the ADS baseline, and you see them now appropriated here out of the special fund as individual project appropriations.
And it makes a lot more sense,
So
much
that-
more transparent.
That's gonna upgrade and replace labor's.
Yeah, Department of Labor and Transportation, and so these are projects that we'd already identified. It's just a matter of moving the money from a digital services to this modernization special fund. So I think this is goes through to page 11. So I think we're all set with that. And
Section
then
48 is going to start to feel very repetitive with what we went over at the beginning of the week. And the C-section.
and reversions.
So you agreed to a lot of the things that we've covered when you see green in here. What I'll do is point out where things are probably going to change. At the top of page 12 on number 10, that's where you'll be adding 850. We transferred it to the cannabis fund for the lab startup. The sweep out of the TIB debt service fund to the transportation infrastructure bond fund. That was in the letter. I don't know if we touched on it very much, but
Because because we have no debt, we paid it all.
Yeah.
Last year, we paid that.
the bottom of the page, you see the Vermont Life sweep out. You see the inclusion here or abandoned property in sub 2 at the top of page 13 was the change. Additional money coming in on abandoned property. And you will also, you don't see it here, but we'll be replacing the stars under the yellow is an adjustment to the DFR fee estimate that will sweep in. And that's a piece of good news, about almost $13 million piece of good news of additional money coming into the general fund. And you see that in the technical memo on the second to last page of the technical memo.
So where am I sitting?
We have to add it. But the
I'm
technical,
not seeing it.
we're gonna replace the stars with an amendment to sub 3 of this section, which ups the DFR direct app by almost $13 million. What you can see what's gonna go in green is in the memo on page 5 on the technical memo, where we're changing a $45.6 million number to a $58.6 million number.
So that,
You will see a new section here with the next version of the bill next week when you get it.
Well, that's the kind of news we like,
Yes, that's a nice.
the revenues from DFR. And we were asked, why is it so much more? And
I've asked for the fund.
They tended to want to be conservative enough to offer up an amount that was greater than they felt was.
And I did request the information on those funds so we can understand, how the estimates are arrived at, especially in the context of does it have an impact on 24's estimate as well?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they could be kind of lumpy, can't they? I mean, some years are bigger.
We tried to get rid of some of the lumpiness. I don't know that we got rid of all of it. That's a technical.
All right. Well, maybe we can legislate.
So I think some are still on a 2-year cycle, but I'm not positive if all of them are on a 2-year cycle. In number 4, these are the other, these are the reversions into the general fund.
What page are you now?
At the very bottom of page 13 and on 14, there is one item that was in that should be taken out. You see that was the general election.
That's out.
The ed fund reversions on the bottom of page 15, there's no change in those from what's been presented. And then on page 16, this is where the transportation reversions that you were mentioning earlier came in, and where you see the.
Yeah, and you can see some of them are kind of large, like the class 2 highway and the structures. So, but we've already talked about why that is. It's no cut. It's just changing so that they're anticipating what the actual payments being made.
was there a reason, or I don't remember the reason in the 8-7 for the town highway? Was that
They're all the same.
hard?
It has to.
Because not enough.
No, I'm gonna let Chris is here, and he can explain it. It has nothing, it has to do with what you're setting aside, anticipating, and moving to a system, so you're budgeting the amount based on what you actually intend to pay out. It's sort of like, as I said, a capital bill. You might have a 3-year project. You're not, and you're gonna pay it out. You're not paying it all out in 1 year. So what this is doing is moving that money to reflect when the actual expenditure is anticipated to be made.
No town will get less.
That makes sense on doing that.
So this is just the money that's associated with converting to that, to the, what we think is what the agency feels is a better way of accounting for these projects and
Is it
expenditure.
a town official looks at
Yeah, it
that,
looks like it's a
perhaps
cut.
to see it,
Yeah.
phone or email?
Well, we ran into that same problem, remember, with the childcare caseload? And the caseload was higher than estimated, and people were saying, you're taking money away from childcare, and all you're doing is adjusting expenditure based on the caseload. So we have that potential for anybody to look and say, well, you made a reduction. It's not a reduction.
It would be good for us to have a.
So,
Yeah.
so we did have a presentation, transportation, and I think everybody was comfortable with these. Including the 100,000
For like e-bikes.
e-bikes. Well, we had to reminisce about what we'd already done, put in law. Oh. So let's move on.
Page 17, section 49. This is just updating the date. We had the correct, the date didn't get updated for this transfer.
I think we all agree with that.
Section 50, these are newly established positions. We didn't establish positions in the youth and family advocate. You will also see a further amendment in here with the cannabis positions in the next iteration of the Senate.
Oh, yeah,
proposed
for the lab, staff, staff the lab.
And then we also, I guess, didn't really establish the positions for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the 3 commissioners, so that's what's happening at the time. Top of page 18. What you see struck is the Rural Infrastructure Assistance Program. We'll come to in a later section. The language wasn't quite ready, so they took it out of the bill on the House committee and added it on the floor.
On an amendment, I saw
Yeah.
that. Okay, so now 51.
51 is the.
So let me
technology.
ask, when we do the bill, will we put it back in here?
No,
Amendment language
which amendment?
on the infrastructure?
No, I think you'll leave it where it is. Might be a different, I think once you get to what was put on the house floor, like you'll probably concur with that part of it where it is.
I will, but I'm just wondering where it goes and what
Yeah, I think it can stay where it is. This is just showing that the governor had it here. Not that the bill itself had it there, yeah. That's all that the strikeout is showing. It was in the governor's original
I
proposal.
understand that, Stephanie,
Yeah.
but with the language that was approved by the House by amendment, when they sent the AA over.
Yeah.
Where's the?
It's in section
language?
87 point.
So we wouldn't put it on
We wouldn't
part of
put it
page
in here.
4 where the $3 million is.
It would take, you were sort of describing the program, so the money usually is referring to what program it's funding.
So my question really is, why with that replacement, we agree with it, why are we not putting an 8101?
Because the bill as it came out of the House Appropriations Committee had section numberings in an order.
So it have
Because
to
it just
redo the
didn't-
whole thing,
Yeah.
forget it. I think that's all they're saying is, why don't we plop it there, but it would need renumbered.
So that's when this, now page 4, when we say section 87A, that's what it's referring to, whatever. Yes.
You don't.
There's always a logistical challenge of the structure of this, any budget bill.
Huh?
It's already renumbered in the company path now.
Oh. All right, no. Shall we keep going? And then we're gonna go until 3:30 and then we're adjourning. And then we have a brief meeting and then I'm hitting the road. You can bag my dinner. I mean, in a bag.
We'll bring it
How
in.
about a BPA for container?
That too, I'll take that. This is technology modernization. This is, we've already, what are we doing? We're striking what the governor had.
So I think we're bringing this up to date with what you're appropriating in this section we just went through out of the technology modernization special fund.
I know, but.
So you're making those appropriations, and the JITOC committee has already approved, the ones that are getting struck, I think the committee's already heard from, so we don't need to, and we're keeping the ones that they still need to hear from on the DMV and the labor piece.
The authorizations. Okay, so what we're doing is getting rid of the ones that the oversight committee has already approved and
Leaving the ones that are still,
leave the ones
they have to
that,
come back still.
okay, so it's cleaning it up to all the ones that are simply still subject to author's approval. And then,
Section 52 is the actual operating budget for the community broadband board. And we just made up the $1.5 million general fund number last year because they come in the gate with an operating budget for 23. And so this is just showing up to reflect their actual general fund and federal fund need.
Pretty close.
Yeah, we were pretty close.
Close enough for government.
We're pretty good in here, huh? So that's just,
And you will see in the 24 budget, they are now a line item.
well, we had discussion, and that's what we wanted. We wanted to be able to see.
Yeah.
What was the, cost of the board. So I think, we'll close that out, and then,
And then this is the, in section 53, the authorizing language for the employment supports for that 350 that you appropriate, that's appropriate back in the general fund section.
Stephanie, is that distinct from the governor's, I think it was 3 million in his state of the state?
So that's,
it's 1 million, it's 24.
So this is FY 23 budget adjustment, these are,
So it's 350.
and I didn't bring my 24 forward, did I?
I think it was 1 million.
I know there's a
I
million, I
thought it
don't know
was
if
3.
I think there's a couple components that, I think there's more than 1 million, I think the million might be continued. Let's see what
So
it
this
says.
this is just
This
distinct.
just
from-
relates to the budget adjustment.
That's, this is, yeah, whether this program continues is what I just wanna,
There's no money. Where's the money?
you appropriated back in the section 45 for 350. Refugee resettlement assistance is 1 million, right? I think there's another piece though, I thought.
That's
I
what I
thought
was.
altogether it was. But anyway, that's in the budget.
Not now. It'd be like Scarlett O'Hara, I'll worry about it in the morning. Yeah.
Making dresses for the trains. Remember Carol Burnett's version of that?
Yes.
She pulls them down, but she leaves the pole in.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, gosh. All right. Oh, well. Yeah, they got rid of a focus on, certain selected communities. Just changing capital P with a little one. So are we, and this is,
Is it residents of Vermont?
what,
It's just new Americans.
it says
Under A, it says they're intending to become
who are,
residents or intended, so residents, not
Yeah.
citizenship.
right, and, yeah, okay. It's more intent to reside.
Yeah.
What aren't we covering? We've got refugees, humanitarian parolees, special immigrant visa, asylees, asylum seekers, and other immigrants. I wonder who they are. Would they be I don't know. Well, I want to make sure that we're not leaving anybody out, I guess, but I don't know who they are. Because we did talk about the parolees, and I believe that those are the Afghans, and
Yeah.
we're coming in,
Right.
and Ukrainians are coming in, so.
Kingdom.
All right, well, we want to make sure we don't leave anybody out, so, are we okay with this?
I'm just wondering, it says the language in red, other immigrants with low income who are or intend to become residents of
I know
Vermont.
that was my question.
So could that be people in other states who are declaring an intention?
Visiting?
I mean, like, are we covering moving expenses or
I don't know.
why wouldn't they need to be residents? That's.
Well, maybe it's the legal definition of residents and just not here.
Well, should we simply say other immigrants with low income who are residing in Vermont?
I mean, I'm wondering,
Reside in Vermont.
Yeah,
yeah, there seems to be some attempt to extend it outside the,
we can double check the language with,
Yeah.
is it Becky or?
Becky Wasserman.
Yeah.
Or it may have come from the committee, it may have come from one of the committees in the House.
I'm wondering if maybe you had a population that was outside the state that was looking to get to the state, and this is money that would help
Sometimes you
transport
have,
them, or
you have a sort of affinity.
They're all employment
No, I
assistance.
think we need to look at what it says you can use it for. Coordination, state and local partnerships with organizations.
It could be an organization that's identified a group coming to the state, and then this
They
would
are here and to help them
land
here.
there with some resources. Yeah,
I
And
think
if that's the case, I'm all for it. but-
yeah.
I think that's probably, if you look at number
Should we
3.
define that a little better?
Well, some of them,
Little
in
squishy.
fact, may not be here right now, but we're working with an out of, another state that, organization,
Yes.
that provide them, like asylees, finding volunteer homes and so forth. So it could very well be that you're
It would be
doing
good.
that advanced work to allow them to be settled. So I think we should just confirm the language.
Yeah.
Right, because if you have A linking up with number 3, B3, then it makes sense.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like, could be anything.
Okay, let's just make sure, but all of this is really within employment supports. So it seems to be a bit more, B3 seems to be a bit more expansive, but. To prepare and prepare.
So it's a grant program to support the development of coordinated community-based systems. It wouldn't be a grant to the individuals, it doesn't.
No. No, these are all really developing systems capacity to support the entrance of individuals in different law. Well, let's just double check the language and move on. I don't think at this point we have a problem with the intent and the 350. So I'm going to suggest we not start on global commitment.
And this is
my
just- these are just technical updates to the things that are,
You can keep going.
the items that are outside actually that we don't appropriate, that are certified.
All right, I don't mind doing certain, that's just pro forma.
Yeah.
So,
So on the 2 PNMI pieces that are up next, we just have a small technical change. We have to include room and board for the provision, it's both treatment and room and board, both places. For the division of rate setting shall increase the treatment and room and board portions of the final.
I'm at the top of page 25.
Yeah. And the same, so the one on, at the top of page 25 is mental health, and the one in section 317 is DCF. And both of them need to include both room and board.
Okay, and you'll take care of that, shall increase treatment and room and board. All right, you got that, Grady? Good. Oh, I bet you're right on the edge of your chair.
That brings us into education, and that might be the place
I
to
think
stop.
that's a good place, all right. Why don't we, we've gone through a lot today, and actually, we don't have a lot to kind of, check back on, we've closed out a lot, so I'm gonna suggest that we adjourn for today.